The Titans' initial 53-man roster is set. Heavy emphasis on initial because I'm sure a few more moves will be made and we'll react to those when it happens. But for now, we have 53 players on a roster that we are going to react to. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Oh, welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo and Justin. The Titans have set their initial 53-man roster. Let's talk through some of the biggest surprise cuts, biggest surprise makes, some position groups that are light, some that are heavy. I'm excited to get into this. How are you feeling? You've been working the phones all day. You broke a ton of Titans news, so congrats to you for being the first one on a lot of these guys. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I think I was first on all of them but two.
Oh, wow.
I'm pretty confident it was just two that I wasn't first on. Then there were a couple that went unreported, like Shane Ray, Corey Levin, I think Shai Carter. But out of the ones that were reported, I think I was first on all but two. I mean, I'm tired, to be honest with you, but I'm here with you. I'm excited to knock this out. Emphasis on keyword initial.
Yeah.
Because this feels very, very incomplete to me. And I think a lot of moves are coming in the next couple of days. I don't know if we'll be doing emergency podcasts for all of them, but maybe we'll do like one emergency pod for like the three waiver cuts or three roster claims. What do you do? We just did an Ernest Jones emergency podcast, or the most viewed video ever. It's on track. You're saying you're not going to do an emergency pod? No, initial, again, is the keyword. I'll throw it back to you, but I feel like there's a lot of change coming in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I agree, especially at some of these position groups that we're going to dive into where they kept more or way fewer guys than we expected. Yeah. You mentioned the Ernest Jones emergency pod. Yes, Justin and I hopped on here to record that right after the trade news broke, so go check that out back in the feed. One episode if you missed it. We're going to touch on it briefly here as we talk about the linebackers as a whole, but we will not dive deep into Ernest Jones because we already covered that. One thing we did not cover that I think we should start with, because this happened before all the roster cuts started happening. Titans trade Malik Willis to the Packers for a 2025 7th-round pick. Now, remember, they gave up a 7th-round pick to acquire Leroy Watson earlier in the offseason, so they get that pick back. Leroy Watson ends up not making the roster, so it makes sense to get that pick back however you can. And any reaction to Malik Willis being traded, Justin?
At the risk of sounding like an asshole, a little surprised they found a partner.
Me too.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't think it was going to go that way. Like there were quarterbacks cut on Sunday or Monday, I guess. Tuesday, geez, I don't even know what day it is. Like Bailey Zappi. Okay, not that I think the world of Bailey Zappi, but he's shown more in an NFL regular season than Malik Willis has. You know what I mean? Like the Patriots didn't find a trade. And you nod your head while I said, not you, but if you're listening and nod your head, he's like got like a 63% career completion percentage and a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, like 12 TDs, 12 INTs. Remember, Malik hasn't thrown a career touchdown yet in an NFL game, and he's a 52% passer with 3 interceptions. So yes, Bailey Zappi has shown more. Nate Sudfeld got cut. Desmond Ridder got cut. So I was a little surprised they found a partner. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it. I mean, we were pretty confident he wasn't going to make the 53. I know in that final episode after the preseason, I said, well, what if this saves? We didn't really have him on our projections, so not shocked. Good for Malik to get a fresh start. Good job by Rand Carthon getting something back for a guy he was going to cut. I saw some people say, oh, well, I don't know what the hell just happened to my mic, but I saw some people say, it just moved on its own. I saw some people say, you're leaving that in there. We're not cutting that out. No. I saw some people say, well, it's not good value. You use the 3rd on him. You gave up a 5th to move up, and then you get a 7th back. Well, that wasn't Rand Carthon that made that decision, right? Rand Carthon can only do what he can with what he's got to work with. So, yes, good job on him for getting something back for a guy he was going to trade.
Yeah, the guy he was going to cut, obviously, because you trade him for a 7th. Sorry, you trade him for a 7th rounder. That means he wasn't going to make the team, right? Because a 7th rounder is the minimal value you can get for a player, besides like a conditional 7th rounder. But I think what's interesting about it is, yes, you and I projected Malik off of the 53-man roster, but we also said he's a guy the Titans would like to bring back and develop in their system. Obviously not the case. Keep him on the practice squad we expected. Obviously not the case. So we will see here. I would still expect the Titans will add somebody to be a 3rd quarterback, someone to lead the scout team and be on the practice squad in the event that Will Levis suffers an injury this year, you have somebody you can elevate to the backup position as Mason Rudolph takes over. But that's probably the most surprising part of it is right now they don't have a third quarterback on the roster, and no one that's on the roster that's going to be brought back to the practice squad that was cut on Tuesday, right? Because the only other quarterback was Malik. So we'll see if they make a move for one of the guys you just mentioned there that got cut from around the league, which leaves Will Levis and Mason Rudolph as the quarterbacks. As expected, Will Levis, your obvious starter. Mason Rudolph will back him up. At running back, a potentially surprise cut, depending on how you view the running back position. We both had 4 running backs on our projection. Titans only keep 3 guys. They waive Jabari Small. That was more or less expected. But they also waive special teams demon Hassan Haskins, finally off the roster after a bunch of disturbing legal stuff that was, I guess, never really confirmed. We thought the Titans might cut him a couple years ago. Here he is now, cut from the team. Titans only keep 3 running backs. Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, obvious expected ones, and Julius Chestnut wins the RB3 job.
Well, no surprise that Chestnut wins the job as the pure runner, but I did think they would keep Haskins. And I don't know if we're doing this position by position. You and I didn't really discuss that. But I will say, and maybe I overthought it, I'm going to jump ahead a little. I don't think I would have believed you if you told me that they were going to cut Hassan Haskins, Anthony Kendall, and Matthew Jackson. Because I think I would have said those are probably their 3 best special teams players, at least in terms of, gunners, not return guys, but gunners, tacklers, whatever you want to call them. I don't think I would have bought that they would cut all 3 of them. I mean, the only special teams ace, correct me if I'm wrong, that made the initial 53 is Luke Gifford. And that kind of feels like an Ernest Jones placeholder to me. Like, I don't know that Gifford, because they've got like 7 linebackers on the roster if you count Jones. So they're going to replace one of the 6 they kept with Jones. Is that going to be James Williams or Otis Reese? I mean, I lean towards it's Gifford, unless they say, crap, we didn't keep any of those special teams guys. We got to keep Gifford.
Yeah.
And maybe they think it's easier to get Reese or Williams on the practice squad. But that's, I think, the biggest surprise to me was when I group Haskins with like Kendall and who was the other one? Kendall and Matthew Jackson. I think, though, that's the surprise for me. So I thought Haskins would have made it for teams, but they said the hell with it. We're just going to stick with the 3 best runners we've got. Yeah,
and didn't you also report that they would like to bring Jabari Small back on the practice squad?
That was one of the 2 that I didn't break, actually. One of the only 2. I think it was Aaron Wilson who tweeted the Small one and said they'd like to bring him back to the practice squad, which kind of surprised me that was in that report, because typically sources, they want guys to get claimed. They don't want to immediately put, even if it's a foregone conclusion, they're not going to get claimed. But anyway, no, thanks for bringing up the one that I did. I broke like 39 of them today. You've got the one that I didn't break, locked and loaded. I guess Small will be, Haskins might get picked up elsewhere, right? So I don't know that he won't. So with Small, makes sense. Small will be a developmental guy.
Yeah, you definitely jumped the gun here because I was going to go position by position, but that is okay. Let's move on to wide receiver, and then we'll get more into linebacker when we get there. Wide receiver, no real surprises here, exactly as you and I both projected. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, Treylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Akina, and the rookie Jaquan Jackson round out the wide receiver group, which means a number of guys were cut here, including Kiaris Jackson, Bryce Oliver, Kyle Phillips, Mason Kinsey, Trayshawn Harrison, who was waived with an injury, Sam Schnee, and Colton Dowell has been placed on the PUP list officially as expected. So one of the most straightforward position groups here was wide receiver.
Yeah, cut and dry, no surprises. I will say, Kyle Phillips, I think that means waived with the injury designation is he's not going to go on the practice squad.
Right.
I don't think. So, Mason Kinsey, right? Death, taxes, Mason Kinsey on the practice squad. That's what I'm anticipating. You've got to think they put Bryce Oliver on there as well. And then I wonder, a 3 might be much, but I wonder if like a Kiaris Jackson, if he's healthy, I wonder if he gets back on there because of the special teams return ability. But it feels like Kinsey and Oliver are locks. Nothing's certain until it happens. Maybe Kinsey says, I want to move on. Some of these guys will have practice squad offers elsewhere. And stay tuned to my timeline, because I imagine I'll be reporting a ton of practice squad news on Wednesday.
Yes, we will stay tuned for that. All right, moving on to what was potentially the most surprising position group here, up there with the most surprising, if not the single most surprising, tight end. The Titans keep 5 tight ends. We are the Tennessee tight ends, not the Tennessee Titans. That's a joke I made a long time ago when Mike Mularkey was still the head coach. Just shocking to me because we've been saying all along we expect the Titans to run a shitload of 11 personnel this year. 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 1 tight end. Not a ton of 2 tight end sets in the anticipation here, but Titans were at about 70%, 11 personnel in the preseason. But just because they're not going to run a ton of 12 personnel doesn't mean they're going to run no 12 personnel. Like, there's definitely going to be some 2 tight end sets. There will be the occasional 3 tight end set. You got to have enough bodies there to make that work, obviously, but did you need to keep 5? So who are the 5? Let's go through it. Josh Wiley, Chig Okonkwo, Nick Van Nett. No real surprises there, even though I did leave Nick Van Nett off my projection. We've already talked about how that was a mistake. Thomas Odukoya makes the active roster, and the rookie undrafted free agent David Martin Robinson. So 5 guys in the tight end room. The only one in that room who didn't end up making the team was Steven Stylianos. And when you tweeted out that Odukoya made it, and you also tweeted out that David Martin Robinson made it, and then deleted the tweet that David Martin Robinson made it sent Twitter into a brief little frenzy there over like what's happening in the tight end position. Is Nick Van Nett going to be a surprise cut? Obviously, he wasn't. First, before we react to the tight end position, like what happened with the deleted DMR tweet?
No one man should have all that power, Kanye West said. I didn't think I'd be able to ever send Twitter into such a frenzy. I'll tell you like it is. And by the way, that doesn't God damn this mic. It doesn't bother me, but I didn't have, did you see that? It just like flipped around.
Yeah.
I didn't have, haters, whatever you want to call it. They don't bother me per se. But some people, you didn't. So one guy said, you didn't have the balls to keep up the David Martin Robinson tweet. So I responded with the gif of, remember the South Park guy carrying his balls in like a sled or whatever
the South
it was?
Park
a
guy.
Wheelbarrow, something like that. I responded with that. I had a ton of people come at me for that one. I will say, I have never been wrong about anything I have ever reported. Not one. Go back years. Not one. Never been wrong about anything. Never had to walk something back. Okay. When I tweeted that one out, I'll put my hand up and admit, I don't want to say that I jumped the gun a little, but if you read the first tweet you can't now, but that was deleted. I said, have it on good account.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't say per source. You got to pay very close attention to the wording of tweets. I didn't say per source. I had it on good account. Right after I tweeted that, the Titans pulled him in the room to officially tell him that he had made the team. So I go, you know what? Let him have his moment first. And then when he comes out of that meeting, not that I'm talking to him, I've never spoken to him a day in my life, but let him have that moment. Okay. And then when he comes out, I can, instead of saying have it on good account, I don't love saying that. I only said it with 2 or 3 guys. Instead of saying have it on good account, I can say they have informed per league source.
Yeah.
Right. So I just, I jumped the gun a little. I didn't expect, when I had put out the I have it on good account tweet, I was under the impression that they were not going to pull him in to tell him that they were keeping him. We were working up. Remember what Brian Callahan said at the press conference before, like the day before, said he is the epitome of a UDFA that makes the team. They didn't pull him. The deadline's 4 p.m. Eastern, okay? They pulled him in at 3:55.
Wow.
3:55. Okay? So at that point, I was operating under the impression, when you look at what Callahan said, they hadn't told him anything the entire day. They're not going to tell him anything because he knows he already made it. So that's where I think I'm doing a pretty good job explaining myself here. I don't know, but it was a surprise when they pulled him in at 3:55. So I said, let him go have his moment. That's pretty damn late, right?
Yeah.
Let him 5 minutes before the deadline. Let him go have his. Of course, the paperwork had already been submitted, yada yada. But still, you don't always pull a guy in that late. So let him go have his moment, and then I could tweet it out with the, per source. It's so much cooler when I get to say they have informed him. That's my favorite thing to say, because it means, wow, they really got to tell a guy and he got to have that moment.
Yeah. Ignore the phone ringing in Justin's background. The cuts are over, but the phone lines don't stop ringing, Justin. You're always on. All right. So, yeah, that's the story there. We appreciate you filling us in. So, yeah, Steven Stylianos cut and 5 tight ends kept. We'll see if this holds. This is one of those position groups where they're extremely heavy. They have more tight ends than cornerbacks, which I've never heard of. They are too heavy. So we'll see if, like, Odukoya, they didn't want to, maybe they do want him on the practice squad, but they were afraid if he goes through this initial round of waivers that he won't make it back to the practice squad.
I think he's got a year left of eligibility, international pathway.
Does.
So that's the interesting thing to me. It's it makes me feel like he's not going to be the one sacrificed. And I could be wrong, obviously, but like if you were just, you could have just, I think, put him back on the international pathway.
Can you do that without cutting him, processing him through waivers, and then bringing him back to the practice squad with that exemption?
I don't know the waivers thing. I'm sure it's got to be a process, a one-day thing, but I would think you get to protect him from the waiver process. So I don't have full clarification on,
Me
but
neither.
They're too heavy here. We're going to move on. We spent too much time with this position, but what I am going to say about it that's funny is like, they really stood by keeping our best 53 because the question was, are they going to be bold enough to keep 4?
Yeah.
Is it going to be Vanette and DMR? No, they keep 5. It's Vanette, DMR, and Odukoya. That was what was really shocking to me. They really stood by the best 53 thing with the tight ends.
Which I appreciate that. All right, moving on to offensive line. I wouldn't say this is surprising. It wasn't exactly how we projected it, but it doesn't make it surprising. The 9 that they kept, only 9, not 10, are obviously the starters: J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, Dylan Radins, Nicholas Petit-Frere, and then backing them up, Daniel Brunskill, Jalen Duncan, John Ojukwu, and Andrew Rupsich, which means there were a few cuts that we weren't exactly expecting, like Jerron Christian, Leroy Watson, Brian Dooley, Corey Levin, Cole Spencer, Latavius Simmons. Am I missing anybody? Corey Levin, I say, I think those are the...
Brian Dooley,
I think I said Brian Dooley,
Honestly, not a single surprise here to me. I think my best performing tweets, by the way, Twitter is so damn random. You never know what people are going to latch onto. My most successful, my most viewed tweet of Cut Down Day, I think, was Jerron Christian being released.
Wow.
Like, after an hour, it had like 200,000 impressions or something ridiculous. Like, I think a lot of people just latched onto that because it's a veteran name people know. So other fan bases were like, here's a guy. I wasn't that surprised. I don't know. Like, I kept going back. I always thought Duncan was going to make it, by the way. I don't know why a lot of people didn't. I was going back and forth between Christian and Njoku, and that was a 50-50 toss-up to me. I never thought Watson would make it. The interesting thing, by the way, is Watson and Christian, the 2 offensive tackles cut, were the ones they brought in this offseason because they had familiarity with Bill Callahan, right? The 2 they kept were the ones they already had from the previous. No, I guess Duncan's not the previous regime. Carthon technically drafted him. Oh, and I guess Njoku is also a Carthon guy, but still, you know what I mean, right? Like the previous coaching staff, yada yada. So they kept the 2 they already had. So I wasn't surprised by anything. Latavius Simmons, by the way, small correction. I didn't tweet the correction, but he was initially waived, but then later it was done with an injury designation. He picked up a little something. He was going through a little something there at the end. So there was an injury designation tag to that one. I wasn't surprised by Cole Spencer, Corey Levin, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought initially when they signed Levin way back, I thought he had a good chance to make it, but he ends up, consistently working as a third team center there behind Brunskill. So I think the writing was on the wall there. And same with Spencer. I didn't think he would get ahead of Brunskill and Rupsich. I think they're deep on the interior. Like, I don't think they get enough credit for having Brunskill and Ruffs this year. That's why I didn't think, Spencer and Levin would make it. I like what they've got in the interior.
Me too. They're very light at tackle depth. I mean, like I said on the last pod we did, the idea of somebody going down and it's Jalen Duncan, first guy off the bench at tackle, that scares the hell out of me. And I don't even know if that would be the case because Brunskill's played tackle in his career. Rupsich started his career as a tackle.
It wouldn't be Brunskill. There's no way.
I don't think it would either, but they have options. I mean, so it's going to be John Ojukwu or Jalen Duncan, guys that are extremely raw still.
I think there's a chance they churn one of those on the wire.
I agree.
Everyone, people don't realize this. I hear this all the time, and now I'm saying it, and I'm going to give myself shit. Like, all 32 teams want better O-line depth.
Yeah.
All of them. None of them are happy. You think there are 9 tackles on the wire right now? The teams are going, holy shit, I can't. No, most of them are bad, right?
Yep.
Like, that's why they're on the wire. No one's happy with their O-line. There are like 2 teams, literally, that are probably happy with their O-line depth.
Yeah.
So no one's happy with it. I think it's a spot. Maybe they'll try to churn. I don't know that there's anything better out there than what they've got. Yeah, I think Duncan would be the first guy. I guess it depends on the position, but Njoku's exclusively been right tackle this offseason, I believe. My source, indicates they see Duncan as a swing. Like they see Duncan on the left and the right, and they appreciate that versatility, believe it or not. And he played both left and right in the preseason, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yep.
So My guess is it would be Duncan. Maybe there's a small percentage chance they try to churn this. There's probably not better out there than Jaron Christian.
Yeah, I
You know
agree.
what I
So
mean?
that's going to be interesting to track. Is do they bring one of these two tackles back to be a practice squad guy? I would expect Cole Spencer, given the huge signing bonus he signed as
Levin.
a UDFA, and probably Levin too, just so you have that depth there developing, in your system, as opposed to having to go sign a guy off the street if an injury occurred. But let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball now. I covered the offense, 25 total guys on offense. So that's the number that you and I both projected for offense. We were heavy on running back. We were light on tight end. I was light on offensive line. But that's the offense. On the defensive side of the ball, we'll start with the defensive line. Another position that is fairly light. They only kept 4 here. Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Keandre Coburn, which means this hypothetical battle that we thought was going on for the 5th spot there between Abdullah Anderson, Quinton Bohanna, Isaiah Aiton, TK McClendon Jr. TK McClendon Jr. has been placed on injured reserve, so he's not in the mix at all. He will miss the entire season. But all those other guys that we thought, well, who's going to be the 5th D lineman? The answer was nobody. None of these, they didn't keep a 5th D lineman.
Yeah, there was, I was a little surprised. At one point, I was working a couple sources that were fairly confident that Anderson or Aiton were going to make it. Like one of them were going to be there on the roster. So I was a little surprised it was neither. With TK goes, I'm not shocked they didn't keep Bohanna, even though I like him. I thought he'd be interesting, but I also thought, he's kind of a little redundant because he's similar to Coburn. Like he's a bigger bodied guy that could be the backup to Sweat. You don't need more than one of those.
Right.
But I did think like a McClendon and Aiton or an Anderson would especially make it. Right. And I thought Bohanna would have made it if they didn't have Coburn, by the way. Like I like Bohanna. So this feels like a spot where another move is coming. I don't know that you only go in with 4. That's super light. So feels like they're going to do something on the wire. And I think you can find something. Good D linemen hit the wire. They do. So I think you'll find, like, think of a guy like, remember when they brought in like a Kyle Pico? You know what I mean? I know someone made a joke the other day. Angelo Blackson got cut. I think he's an NFL rosterable tackle. That's what I mean. Like there are rosterable D linemen out there. So I have a feeling something's coming here.
Yeah, and we'll see if they want to bring back any of these guys on the practice squad. To me, Isaiah Aiton stands out as a very likely practice squad candidate, and we'll see about Bohanna and maybe Abdullah Anderson, who's more of a veteran. But that's the D-line group. Let's move to outside linebacker. Another surprise here. Titans keep Harold Landry, Arden Key, Jalen Harrell. That's completely expected. But then we were going back and forth. We kept talking about the best 53, and this maybe, it applied to the tight end room. I don't know if it applied here at the edge group. What was this battle that we kept talking about between Rashad Weaver and Caleb Murphy? Would Rashad Weaver even make the team? Has Caleb Murphy shown enough as more than just like a pure pass rusher? Like, can he actually do the rest of the things that are required of a defender, like stop the run, drop into coverage when asked to? Ended up not mattering. They both make the team, which I think was a surprise that they kept 5 guys here, because you and I said it. We didn't think they had 5 guys talented enough, worthy enough of being on an NFL roster. But here they go. They keep 5. They cut Shane Ray, Thomas Rush. Is that it?
Khalid Duke, the UDFA,
and Khalid Duke,
Kansas State.
Right.
Yeah. You said Thomas Rush. I was a little surprised here. Yeah, I don't know that I can be convinced that both Weaver and Murphy are part of the best 53. I don't really see a need for this. I almost hope something gets churned from here. Like, give me an interior. Like, I would have just straight up kept Abdullah Anderson or Aiton over, Weaver or Murphy. Right? Like, I think there's an extra step here that maybe wasn't necessary, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm surprised. I didn't see a need for this, and I wonder if something's going to change.
There are some, interesting edge guys that got released around the league, so we'll see if the Titans want to churn there. I mean, we've talked about this pretty extensively. It's like, as much as you think waiver claims are going to happen and guys are going to get picked up, ultimately, not that many guys get picked up, and it's usually not the no-name guys.
27 per year.
Right. And it's usually guys like, Kadarius Toney's probably going to get picked up by somebody, whether it's to a practice squad.
Terrace Marshall, Bailey Zappi, I think KJ Henry. KJ Henry's an interesting one, by the way. 5th-round pass rusher from the Washington Commanders last year. Had a couple sacks, had 3 games with multiple pressures, had 10 pressures in the preseason this year. I was surprised they cut him. It just kind of felt like, Dan Quinn brought in Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler from the Cowboys years with him, and felt like they just wanted to move on from a guy from a previous regime. KJ Henry's one to watch.
Yeah, definitely one to watch there. All right, moving on to one of the most interesting position groups of all of them, even more so than the three we just talked about, and tight end. But inside linebacker, Titans obviously keep Kenneth Murray, Jack Gibbons, Cedric Gray, Otis Reese IV, Luke Gifford, James Williams, and they trade for Ernest Jones. Now, that trade is not official yet, so technically the Titans have 52 guys on the roster right now because they have the space ready for Ernest Jones to come in.
I was going to ask if they had the space ready. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, they do. They have only 52 guys, which I think is smart because the alternative to that is that you keep a guy that you're planning to release as soon as this trade goes official, and then it's like, why put a guy through 12 hours of happiness only to cut him?
They're going to do that anyway at some point for waiver claims, but at least that you're not doing it subconsciously. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause you hope to get a guy, that's a different story. But knowing this is coming, you're right. It would have been cruel.
Yeah, I agree. So the question to me then becomes, is Cedric Gray's dealing with a stinger nerve injury in his shoulder with no timetable to return. That doesn't sound like a guy worth using a 53-man roster spot on when you have 6 other linebackers, and Cedric Gray is probably the last or second to last guy in this room, number 6 or number 7, depending on how you view Luke Gifford, who's probably just there for special teams purposes. But Cedric Gray, you put him on an IR situation, maybe that's to come, and then you have the roster spot freed up for a waiver claim or something like that, and then you can keep Luke Gifford for special teams purposes. But I mean, I can't see them going beyond this week with 7 active inside linebackers. That's crazy.
It's crazy. What I don't understand is if Gray was going on IR, why didn't they just do it already?
I know,
because you have I don't know the rules inside out, but you got two spots this year you could have put on IR and brought back during the season. They didn't use any of them. So it's not like, oh, we don't want to use those spots. We said TK McClendon's probably out for the year. It wasn't a recall spot. So why not just use one of those free spots? You no longer have them. It's not like they, you have spots during the season, but the point is you had 2 specifically for this period, right, of finalizing your initial 53. So why not use it? That tells me there maybe, I don't know. To me, it indicates they're not putting him on there. I wouldn't be surprised if they still did because it feels like he should go on there. Right. But a little weird.
Definitely a weird one. So that's one to keep an eye on, and keep an eye on Justin's Twitter feed because he'll probably get the news broken before anyone else. Okay, we can move on to cornerback then, which was another surprising group because there's only 4. They only kept 4 cornerbacks. And when all the news was flying about who was being cut and not cut, everyone started going, oh my goodness, Trey Avery's making this team. Are you kidding me? Not another year of Trey Avery, which I'm kind of like, all right, what do you realistically expect from Trey Avery or any 5th cornerback that's on your roster? Like, they're all going to be bad with maybe some potential and some good moments. So like, if they had kept Trey Avery, I would have been like, good for Trey Avery. I wouldn't have been like, oh, what are they doing? Like so many people on Twitter were saying, ended up being a moot point because they only keep 4 guys. The 4 guys that we expected, the top 4 guys that we expected, but we expected more than just 4. L'Jarius Sneed, Cheeto Awuzie, Roger McCreary, and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Caleb Farley's time with the Titans has likely come to an end unless they bring him back on the practice squad. So he was released. Gabe Judy Lawley was released. Tay Gowan was like the only name that was reported before today as being a roster cut. So he has been released. Eric Guerrero has been released. You mentioned Anthony Kendall a little while ago.
Robert Javier,
a big room, and they trim it all the way down to 4. If we mentioned that D-line's a spot that might be turned in, O-line, backup tackle that might be turned in, if there's any spot that they are 100% claiming somebody, it's cornerback because you don't go into the season with 4 cornerbacks. That's just absolute insanity.
No, that's where they're going to get rid of a tight end or a linebacker, right? Like certainly, or one of those 5th edge guys. So, it's funny. Like I wrote an article and I got this bang on. I said, they are not good enough at corner to keep extra guys at. Okay. They're simply not, but I thought they'd keep 5. It's hilarious that they're not even like going to pretend. Right. Yeah. They're not good enough here, but having 4, they're going to be in, nickel personnel most of the time. They have 3 corners on the field most of the time, with just 1 on the bench. Right. So they're obviously bringing in a second guy. I thought one of them would be kept. I thought it would be either Eric Guerrero, Anthony Kendall, or Judy Lawley. Like those were the 3 I thought were probably fighting for that one spot. I thought Trey Avery was probably on the outside looking in. the whole time. But they admit the inevitable. Go get my guy Reddy Stewart, cut from the Bears, UDFA, 42 career PBUs at Troy. 3 interceptions in the preseason, just a baller. I was one of the only guys that was on this kid pre-draft process. He freaking balled out. He's small though, but he balled out in the preseason. And he intercepted Caleb Williams a couple times at camp. The kid's a damn baller. UDFA, so I don't know that he'll get claimed, but certainly something's coming here at corner.
I'll throw a name your way for a cornerback potential name to watch. The 49ers cut Rock Ya-Sin today.
Yeah.
He would fit well with that aggressive, physical corner style that Denard Wilson seems to want.
Not a claim guy, right, though? I think it doesn't matter, but not a claim guy, I don't think. He's a vested veteran, I assume, which means they could just flat out sign him. Doesn't have to go through claims. The other one is Trey Flowers. I think they cut in Jacksonville. That's also a vested veteran that they could go out and sign. Couple veteran DBs out there, certainly. That they have options.
Detroit Lions are expected to sign Tim Patrick. That's random, but it just happened.
That's quick.
If you happen to see that news at any point and now you're listening to this podcast, you might be able to connect the dots on exactly when we were recording. All right. We got one position left here before we get to specialists. Safety. They keep 5 safeties. I'm not 100% shocked that they kept 5. I am a little shocked that who the 5th one was, but it's Amani Hooker, Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, Elijah Molden, and Mike Brown. One interesting note on Elijah Molden, obviously was drafted initially as like a slot cornerback kind of guy. So maybe there's an argument there for why they only kept 4 cornerbacks. But the counter to that is Brian Callahan essentially said, we view Molden as a safety like a week ago. So I don't think...
Callahan said he's not a corner.
Yeah, right. So that's probably not the way that they view, he may be able to do it in a pinch if they absolutely needed somebody, but that's not how they see Elijah Molden here. So Elijah Molden's going to be the 4th safety, and Mike Brown, the 5th safety. We already talked about Matthew Jackson getting cut. Keaton Ellis also cut. Shaheem Carter also cut. So the safety position thinned out here, and really tough break for some of those guys who were fighting for a spot and having a good camp, like Matthew Jackson leading the Titans in interceptions during training camp. Unfortunate for those guys that they go out and sign Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams, because that just sort of made the safety competition moot.
I told you guys the whole time, didn't I? I think I said it on this podcast. I'm almost positive that Mike Brown had a chance, that they liked him too, and I thought it was 50-50. I did say that, right?
Yeah.
50-50 between him and Matthew Jackson. I would have thought it would have been Jackson, but again, I flip a coin. They liked Mike Brown. I was told that the whole time. I feel for Jackson. I'm really stunned he hasn't landed, back with them, and we'll see if something happens with the practice squad, but maybe not. I'm going to tease something here that might never happen. You guys are going to hate me. You don't even know this. Something surprising might still happen here. So
what does that
I don't
mean?
know that they're done at safety, done. But something surprising could potentially happen. It may never happen. And I'll probably never say it if it doesn't happen.
What's the point of this?
Remember, I teased something. Yeah, I mean, if something big happens a day from now or 2 days from now, you're going to be like, oh, shit, Justin. But,
Justin,
I don't know.
I think there might be a huge trade made in the NFL in the next year, but I don't know. Now, if it happens...
it'll happen in the next day or 2 if it happens. So you'll... And I'll get more into it if it happens. I'll tell you off the air. How about that?
Okay, I would appreciate that because I'm confused. All right, special teams. No real surprises here. Nick Folk, kicker. Ryan Stonehouse, punter. Morgan Cox, long snapper. Ty Zettner, the backup punter, was released. Probably a practice squad guy just to make sure you have an extra punter, but maybe they don't want to use a roster spot on that, so maybe they'll just sign a guy off the street if Stonehouse gets hurt. And Braden Narvison. They cut him. They cut our guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we knew it was coming, essentially, but you're going to be able to sneak this guy on the practice squad? I lean no.
Fingers crossed.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know, right? Not a lot of kicking jogs open around the league, and there's probably some veterans. Like, I think the Packers cut Anders Carlson, Patriots cut Chad Ryland, who they drafted highly recently. So a couple of veteran guys available, high draft picks. We'll see if they get lucky here.
Yep, and that does it. We did it, the whole roster. Cool. Anything else you want to say?
That does it. I appreciate you guys for following along. I had a good day. I always like to say this, and I mean it, not cliche. I get joy out of the ones that I say made the team. No joy out of the ones that didn't. But it's the job. I report what's told to me, and appreciate you guys for following along. I hope I handled it all with care and class. That's always my goal. I think that's why I get this news every year. People know I handle it with class. And best of luck to those guys. The journey's not over. I spoke to a lot of them today. Spoke to Tay Gowan earlier today. He's a guy that I knew when he got drafted in 2021, whatever it was. Spoke to a couple of those guys today. Head up to all of them. and the journey's not over. And plus, there's a developmental league, so there's good things for these guys, more opportunities than there were a couple of years ago. So hopefully they can all get things back on track.
A little bit of news as we wrap up this podcast here. This is very old now, so maybe we should have known this, but I just saw it. James Bradberry is probably going to make the Eagles, or maybe he did already because this was tweeted before the deadline. But the Eagles spoke to some teams about a possible trade, including the Titans. So we're looking for a move at cornerback. That's
a weird one.
It almost was...
But they were converting him to safety, I think, this offseason. The Eagles were.
Well, Bradberry played for Denard Wilson when Denard Wilson was the Eagles DB coach, and apparently NFL sources said he was a fan. This was tweeted by Jeff McClain about 4 hours ago.
But if he is a converted safety, maybe something's happening at safety, right? In Tennessee, and I don't know.
You teased it already, so maybe so. But hey, look, and just indication that something could be happening in the secondary, which with only 4 corners on the team, yes, we expect that. All right, that'll do it. We went through the roster. When the practice squad is announced, we'll hop back on here and do a little practice squad run through and talk about the waiver claims that happen or don't happen. We'll see what happens with that. Ernest Jones, welcome to the Titans. If you want a more thorough breakdown on what he brings to this defense, go check out the previous episode in the feed. You guys are absolutely loving that one. I mean, it's like you said, it's our most viewed podcast ever, essentially. I mean, it's on pace to be the most viewed podcast ever. L'Jarius Sneed trade reaction was number 1, sits there at number 1 right now, but maybe this will pass it. We'll see. It's on a flying pace right now. So appreciate everyone for tuning into that. Appreciate y'all for watching this. If you are watching on YouTube, remember to subscribe to the Music City Audible channel. Give this video a thumbs up, turn on channel alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video, and drop a comment below. Who's the most surprising roster cut? Who's the most surprising guy to make the team? Let us know in the comments below, or comment anything else you want, and we will hop in there and respond to you. And thanks also to Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. Sinkers Beverages is the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985. Their knowledgeable staff is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. From birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. And if you head to the sinkersbeverages.com website or check the link in this podcast description, you can join the In Crowd. In-crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. Plus, Sinkers is on Uber Eats, so if you need some booze delivered to your front door, you don't have time, you don't have energy to go get the drinks you need, Sinkers will deliver everything straight to your house or apartment. So that's it. That's it, Justin. We're done. Did you have something else you want to say? You held up 2 fingers. Was that to say that?
No, I was saying bye. Y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
All right, you did it. Bye.
A Broadway sports media production.